What can we do when we feel so far behind the ball that we don't know how to make any traction at all? That's what we're going to talk about today. Hi everyone, this is Jill from the Northwoods. I took many actions to get myself out of the ditch in life. I was screwed in so many different ways that I didn't think I could get out of the ditch. And you can see how this channel is going to go. The first thing I started tackling was ADHD. The fact that I understood I was different than the other kids around me. The last step I took is the Monjero channel. That's the one I'm fighting right now, the weight loss issue. And so if you're interested in that aspect, that's what that playlist is all about. The second topic that we're going to talk about is small steps. When I grew up, I was way up in the Northwoods. Our library was tiny and barely had any books. Our schools were okay, but they weren't very good and didn't have a lot of resources and didn't have a lot of educational things, although it had a pretty good library. And I wasn't getting much help around me. My friends were not interested in school and not interested in really getting out of this. That was the thing that surprised me the most, is the fact that they seemed content in falling into some of the same traps their parents had fallen into and not really getting out. I wanted out. I had some examples outside of my family, namely my grandparents, who were well-to-do, but they worked their way up. They came here as immigrants. They did everything they could to get educated, to work their way up, and in the end did pretty well. So I saw an example of how hard work could get you someplace. I knew there was more out there, that there was more ways that you could get it, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I couldn't figure out how to do it. And so what struck me is this quote from Lao Tzu that said, "Journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step." Boy, when I read that quote, it blew my mind. You're right. You always start someplace. And if you don't start, you never get there. And there was another quote about how one raindrop creates an entire ocean. You got to start small. And that's what struck me. And that's why in the end, I have the Start with Small Steps podcast, the Small Steps with God, the Bible in Small Steps. I'm all about taking small steps because I realized at some point, sometimes it's all we can do. And it's not to say it's bad. It is progress. And making progress of any size is what's really important. And so as a kid, I realized that's the secret. That is the secret of how I get things done. And it has lasted my whole life. We'll talk about more recent successes I've had with it. But I was overwhelmed as a kid. Also, I was going to school. I was taking care of my parents. I was helping my friend graduate because she had already been held back 1 or 2 years. And so I was tutoring her. And I was invested in a lot of clubs, and I was already, as a little kid, tied up. So I had a lot of things going on. And when I read these quotes, what it meant to me was small steps. Start your hike. Start your 1,000-mile hike with a single step. Keep going. And the reason that small steps work so well is that, first of all, I didn't have time for big, drastic changes. This was something that I could sustain if I started taking small steps to improve my life. And it felt less daunting. I like I said, was overwhelmed even as a young child. And I would get despair. Like, oh, I don't know how I'm really going to do this. I don't really have what it takes. Or in my house, I'll just say this, that it was quite messy. And sometimes my parents would leave me home because back in those days, you could leave your kids at home alone for a couple of weeks and no one was going to get mad at it. I remember one time they went to my father's class reunion, visited relatives. They left $20 on the table and they said, no parties. And then they left. I cleaned the house. I cleaned the entire house. And then for 2 weeks, I lived in clean house bliss. Now, I'm not the cleanest person in the world. I'm not the most organized person in the world. I like stuff. I like my yarn. I like things all over the place. But for 2 weeks, I lived in a normal house and it was nice. But how did I get there? Small steps. Remember my first thought when looking at this was, oh, this is so much. This is so much to do. And I didn't know what to do. So I started taking things into smaller steps. Now, I mentioned previous episodes that I'm not a eat the frog first kind of person. I need winding up. And so what I do is I learned about myself, eat the cake first. Try something that you can have a small victory in. Clean the bathroom. The bathroom's small, right? Do that. And then when you have a success under you, then you start feeling like, okay, this is going all right. And by small steps, I was able to clean that house. And that provided confidence in me and it gave me momentum. And then I could succeed on some of these harder tasks that I had to do in order to clean the house. I think I call it the eat the cake first, but maybe it's the snowball victory method where you start as a small snowball. I grew up in the Northwoods and you roll into a bigger snowball. I think I like the snowball thing better. But that way I was able to get things done. I had some quick successes as I got there. And as I saw it improving, I'm like, okay, I can do this. That's how I started doing everything. I'm just using the house cleaning as one example. I'll give you some others here in a moment. But then I started actually gaining some habits. I started realizing, hey, wait, instead of me feeling forced to clean this house or having a deadline to clean this house, now I start, having some basic patterns. I'll tell you the first one. It's really dumb. Get the trash out. If you have trash, get it outside in the bin or get it inside in the bin and take the inside trash out to the bin. Just get trash out of the house. Now you have some space, you have some places that are clean, you have some surfaces that are clean. Awesome. Now let's try to get things into piles, right? These are the old newspapers and magazines. We don't need them anymore. Here's some old clothes. Maybe we want them. Let's get them washed. I started creating now habits that have lasted even this long. Whenever I have a big house cleaning project, I don't have trash around my house now, but that same kind of style applies where I go through these steps and they're all small steps of getting whatever project I'm working on done. You have to realize too that is small steps, it adapts with your life. Sometimes at school, I have a paper due and I had a lot of work and I had to do a lot of research and I didn't have much time. Great. An even smaller step. Instead of cleaning the bathroom, let's just get the stuff off the floor. Something really even much smaller than that. I can adjust. And sometimes it's summer. I don't have school. Now my small steps can be a little bit bigger because I have a little bit more free time. Small steps can adjust as I adjust in my life. And if there's some weeks where I just can't get anything done, I have a rule now where I have to get rid of one garbage bin worth of stuff. It's kind of a funny thing I got into in the pandemic. But either I throw it out in trash or I take it to Goodwill if it's still good and useful. But every week, one bin of stuff gets out of this house. Old stuff, things I don't use anymore. I'm a computer nerd. Man, I found a video card from like 1990. Who needs that, right? Nobody. Okay, great. The other nice thing about small steps and having that small steps mentality is the fact that it works on darn near anything. It can work on improving your mental health. It can work on weight loss. It can work on productivity. It can work on cleaning your house. It works on my work projects. It is a strategy for everything. It can work everywhere. And that's the important thing is that you have a pattern that gets built into you where you can fix almost anything in your life. And the other part that I like about it is life goes on while you're doing these small steps. So even when you have a project and you're doing small steps, you can still have fun. You can still go read your book, play your video game, go to the movies, whatever you're doing, because small steps are modular, right? They're able to be moved around a little bit more. And so now it works with almost every schedule. That's where I got into small steps. And then as I started the Start with Small Steps podcast, the reason I did this and was this message, and I brought this up before, the 2019 Queen Elizabeth speech, where she talks about we got to the moon with small steps. We got to peace in Europe after the horrible World War II with small steps. And eventually we're able to shake hands. I thought, she sees it too. Small steps are the way to go. They're how you actually get things done. What got me a bit about other productivity things I watched is that so many times people talk about doing a big bang thing, right? you're going to start a podcast channel. You're going to start a YouTube channel. And you're going to sit down and you're going to gut it out and just get everything done, working all the time. And I don't think people have time for that. I started feeling like some of the advice I was seeing in books and with authors and with other podcasts, I couldn't do. This idea of how do you change your life around? Well, this is what you do. You get up in the morning and you meditate for an hour. Then you journal for an hour. Then you go work out for an hour. Then your chef will prepare a nice breakfast for you. Then you take a nap. Then you do some work. Now you go back to the gym in the afternoon. You journal at the 5 o'clock hour. And I'm like, nobody can live like that. Nobody can live like that. You have a life, you have kids, you have family, you have a job. This is not how you do it. And I felt when I listened to advice from people that it was impossible to follow. Maybe they could do it. Maybe they do it because they don't have a full-time job. I have a full-time job. Maybe they can do it because they don't have anyone else in their lives, and so they don't have people asking them to help them move and drive this person here, and hey, would you go to the movies with me on, life gets in the way. Small steps are where it's at, and small steps are things that you can keep stacking on each other. As you get good at something, your small steps get more impactful because now you're good at cleaning your house or you're good at your job, and so you can do more in smaller chunks. But if you look at 2 books, one of them is called Tiny Habits, and this is by B.J. Fogg. He's a Stanford professor, and he talks about creating tiny habits that are so small you couldn't possibly fail. Think, for example, 1 push-up. Okay. Think, for example, I'm going to lift 1 bicep curl. Okay. He starts and mentions it. I'm going to floss 1 tooth. And the idea is not so much of a trick, but the idea is that if you just floss that 1 tooth, you pat yourself on the back, you did great. Maybe you want to do the rest of the teeth, but don't fret yourself about it. At some point, you will be flossing all your teeth. Making a goal so small you couldn't possibly fail at it, that's the way to go. And if you have multiple versions of these, that's fine too. The small steps can be stacked on top of each other. But it's not a trick. He wants you to cut your goals so small that you couldn't possibly fail at them. Because what's more important than getting your task done is getting the habit in place. Now you have the habit of flossing 1 tooth. That is going to carry you when you floss all your teeth. Now the habit's formed. So small steps have been a big part of this for me all along, which also means that you're not going to change everything in a day. Even with the current diet I'm on, if you look at my Monjaro playlist that I'm doing right now, I'm taking a drug right now. The drug doesn't do everything for you. You still have to eat healthy. In fact, I think you have to eat even healthier because it has the potential to really mess up your guts. It won't exercise for you, but you want to have bone and muscle mass when you're done with your exercise. So I started small and I started increasing my time. And just recently, I committed to one of those walk around Ireland challenges at work to increase the amount of exercise I do. I'm ready for it because I've been working my way up slowly. I'll be honest with you, I'm not an exercise person. I never have been. I am a person who does nothing all the time and then goes out for a 30-mile hike. And then I'm crushed and I'm broken because I never worked my way up to it. Now, with small steps, I am working my way back up into it so I can be a healthy person. I can have muscle mass. I can have bone mass. I can increase my health and set aside energy so that when I'm done with this drug and I'm on my own and I'm having to keep this, I know the right things to do, but small steps. The other thing that I did when it came to terms of small steps is I never was a really good house cleaner. Let's just say that. Even though my parents were hoarders, I do a little bit better job. I don't get into the same situations that they do, but I'm still not spick and span everything, clean all the time where I could have a dinner party at a drop of a hat like my grandmother could. So during the pandemic, what I started doing is I have an Apple Watch, right? I have the Apple Watch, and every hour it wants me to stand up and walk around for 2 minutes. And what I used to do is I used to get up and go get snacks. But now I'm on this drug and I'm trying to lose weight. I don't get up and get snacks anymore. I ended up dividing all the tasks that I have around cleaning my house into small steps. So I broke my kitchen up into 4 or 6 quadrants. It started out as 6 quadrants, but I moved it to 4. And every time I have my standing reminder that I should get up and walk around a little bit, I wipe off the table, I clean anything off of it, and I do, maybe 5, 10 dishes. Okay, great. Sit down. Next hour. Next hour, I might clean up the other quadrant, or I might do something else. Oh, I got to take the laundry basket in the basement and throw in a load of laundry. 2 minutes, right? Okay, great. I started breaking my whole life up into small steps. And now I do it. And now I do it in these get up and walk around steps, and I barely even notice anymore. My house is clean, and I didn't really set aside any work to go and clean it. When you get into that mode where you're not doing small steps, you look at your house, oh, my house is so messy. Oh, it's going to take like hours to clean. I don't want to do it. This is so tiny and so small, I never even think about it. Same thing with my backyard. So I have a yard that takes about an hour and a half to mow. It's a pretty good sized backyard. I have weeds growing in my backyard. If you listen to the Bible in Small Steps, I'll talk about all the weeds growing in my backyard in terms of the Bible. And I'm just not good at it. And I'm just not a good gardener. So I started breaking things up. One time I mow the front lawn. Next time I mow the back lawn. One time I go out with my choppers and I chop down all the trees that are trying to grow in my backyard. Next time I bring out the hedge clips and I start to cut down the weeds that are growing in my backyard. Then on Saturday and Sunday, I usually pick a small project that I can get done. I had some sort of hole forming in my backyard. So I, one Saturday, just filled up the hole and, patted it down and put grass seed on it. Instead of making this big production out of cleaning my backyard, I turned it into small steps and now I actually get it done and I don't feel pained about it. Good to go. And you can see examples of small steps all around you. Those 5K runs where it has a couch to 5K app. Small steps, increasing every day. It's better for you, healthier for you, if you keep that going with small steps. So it's apparent around the world that small steps really make the difference. So for me, as a kid who was overwhelmed by life, small steps really saved my life. All right, everyone, thanks so much. I appreciate you watching this. I hope that if you have small steps, you would put them right here in the comment and let me know what your small steps are. Have you had successes with that? Or you're welcome to email me and tell me what your small steps are at jill@startwithsmallsteps.com. Did you guess what my domain was going to be? And let me know what you're doing in order to make your life better. I appreciate you watching. Please remember to subscribe, tell a friend, and boy, have a great week.